Freedom is not just the right to speak, it is the right to be heard. It is the right to lead, to serve, and to fight for a better future without the fear of chains. And yet today, a leader, a man chosen by the people, sits behind bars, his voice silenced, his rights stripped away. When injustice happens, silence is not an option. Silence has never changed the world, and it never will. It is easy to look away, to pretend we don't hear the cries for justice, to convince ourselves that one voice or voicedos not matter. But history has shown us that every great movement, every fight for freedom, every revolution that shook the world began with a single voice that refused to stay silent. A voice is more than just sound. It is more than words spoken into the air. A voice carries power. It carries truth. It carries the weight of generations who fought before us and the hope of those who will come after us. A voice, when used with courage, can break barriers, challenge oppression, and inspire millions to rise. Think about the greatest figures who have walked this earth: leaders, activists, visionaries. They did not have armies. They did not have wealth beyond imagination, but they had something far greater. They had a voice, and they used it. They spoke when it was dangerous to speak. They stood when the world told them to sit down. They shouted when power tried to silence them. And because of that, history remembers their names. Today, we are witnessing a moment that calls for voices to rise again. A leader chosen by the people has been silenced. Imran Khan, a man who dedicated his life to service, to justice, to the dream of a better Pakistan, is being kept behind bars. But let me tell you, something prisons cannot hold: the truth. They cannot chain the will of the people. They cannot erase a voice that speaks for justice. Because here's the truth: when you try to silence someone, their voice only grows louder. When you try to oppress a movement, it only gains strength. And when you try to crush the hopes of a nation, that nation will rise. So, to the people listening today, I ask you, what will you do with your voice? Will you let fear keep you silent, or will you stand up and speak? Will you turn away, or will you demand justice? Because a voice is powerful, but it is even more powerful when joined by millions. History is watching, the world is listening, and it is our voices that will shape what happens next. Democracy is more than a system of government. It is a promise that power belongs to the people, that their voices matter, that their choices shape the future of their nation. It is a contract between the governed and those in power, built on trust, fairness, and the fundamental belief that leadership is not taken by force, but earned through the will of the people. But what happens when that promise is broken? What happens when democracy is treated as an obstacle rather than a foundation? Today, we are witnessing a moment that should alarm every believer in justice and freedom. When a leader, elected by the people, is removed not through ballots but through backdoor maneuvers, when voices that challenge authority are silenced instead of heard, and when those who stand for the truth are locked away instead of being given a fair trial, democracy is no longer functioning, it is under attack. A nation that claims to be democratic cannot selectively decide when democracy applies. It cannot claim to stand for the will of the people while suppressing the very leaders the people have chosen. It cannot speak of justice while using the law as a weapon against political opponents. That is not democracy, that is control disguised as governance. Throughout history, we have seen this pattern before. Leaders who gain the love and trust of their people become a threat to those who seek to hold power indefinitely. They are accused, imprisoned, exiled, and sometimes even erased from history books. But their impact cannot be erased from the hearts of the people. Democracy is threatened when power is placed above principle, when justice is bent to serve those in authority rather than the people it is meant to protect. The imprisonment of Imran Khan is not just about one man, it is about the future of Pakistan's democracy. If an elected leader can be removed and silenced without due process, what does that mean for every citizen? What does it mean for the young generation that was told their votes mattered? What does it mean for the activists, the journalists, the ordinary people who dare to speak up? If democracy is abandoned when it is inconvenient for those in power, then what remains is not governance sight, is dictatorship by another name. But here is something that history has also taught us. Democracy cannot be killed. It can be suppressed, delayed, and wounded, but it always finds a way to rise again. The people always remember. The voices of millions cannot be silenced forever. And those who attempt to dismantle democracy always find themselves on the wrong side of history. The question is not whether democracy will survive. It always does. The question is, how long will injustice be allowed to reign before the people take back what is rightfully theirs? Courage and leadership is not about holding a position of power. It is not about standing at the top while others follow. True leadership, the kind that inspires nations, the kind that changes history, is about standing firm in the face of adversity. It is about making the difficult choices, speaking the difficult truths, and refusing to back down even when the cost is high. A leader is not measured by how many people bow to them, but by how many lives they uplift. And yet, time and time again, we have seen that the most courageous leaders are the ones who face the greatest resistance. Because real leadership does not come from fear, it comes from conviction. It comes from an unshakable belief in justice, in fairness, in the responsibility to serve the people rather than control them. And that kind of leadership terrifies those who seek to rule through oppression. When we look at the story of Imran Khan, we do not just see a politician. We see a man who had everything: fame, success, admiration, and yet he chose the harder path. He stepped into leadership not because it was easy, not because it was profitable, but because he believed Pakistan deserved better. And that belief made him dangerous not to the people, but to the powerful elite who had grown comfortable in a system that benefited them while failing the rest of the country. Courage and leadership is standing your ground when the walls are closing in. It is refusing to be silenced when the world tells you to stop speaking. It is knowing that the consequences may be severe exile, imprisonment, even threats to life, and yet choosing to fight for what is right anyway. That is the kind of courage that Imran Khan has shown. That is the kind of leadership that history remembers. Because let's be clear, anyone can sit in a position of power, but not everyone can lead. Anyone can make promises, but not everyone will sacrifice for their people. Leadership is not about self-preservation. It is about standing on the front lines when the storm comes. It is about taking the blows so that the people do not have to. And when a leader like that is unjustly removed, the people feel it. They feel the void. They feel the loss of someone who was willing to stand up for them when so many others refused. But here is the truth about courage. It is contagious. When one person stands tall, others find the strength to do the same. When one voice refuses to be silenced, millions begin to speak. And when one leader fights for justice, a movement is born that cannot be stopped. The world has seen leaders who ruled through fear, and it has seen leaders who inspired through courage. The ones who ruled through fear have been forgotten, discarded by history. But the ones who led with courage, they live forever in the hearts of the people. Because courage does not die. It does not fade. It leaves a legacy that no prison, no government, and no act of oppression can ever erase. The truth has always carried a price. It has never been free, never been easy, and never been without risk. Those who dare to speak it, who dare to challenge power with honesty, who refuse to accept lies disguised as reality, they have always paid a price. But history has also shown us that while the cost of truth is high, Its value is far greater than anything that could be lost in the fight for it. Look back at the world's most defining moments, and you will see a pattern. The greatest leaders, the most powerful voices, the change makers who shaped history, they were not rewarded for telling the truth. They were punished for it. They were exiled, imprisoned, silenced, and in some cases, even killed, because the truth is dangerous to those who build their power on deception. It is a threat to those who rely on fear and misinformation to maintain control, and so they will do everything they can to suppress it. But here's the thing about the truth: it does not die. It cannot be buried, no matter how deep they try to hide it. It cannot be locked away, no matter how many prison cells they build. And it cannot be silenced, no matter how many voices they try to quiet. The truth has a way of resurfacing. It finds its way into the hearts and minds of the people, spreading like fire until it becomes impossible to ignore. Today, we see the cost of truth playing out in real time. Imran Khan, a leader who spoke openly, who called out corruption, who refused to bow to the forces that have held Pakistan back for decades, now behind bars. Not because he committed a crime, not because he betrayed his people, but because he dared to challenge the status quo. He dared to stand up and say, "This is not right. The people of Pakistan deserve better." And for that, he is paying the price. But let's ask ourselves, if the truth were not so powerful, why would they fear it? If his words had no weight, why would they go to such great lengths to silence him? The answer is simple. Because the truth shakes the foundations of oppression. It exposes the cracks in a broken system. It forces those in power to face their own failures. And instead of fixing what is broken, instead of answering the demands of the people, they believe they can control the narrative by removing the one who speaks against them. But history has proven them wrong time and time again. Leaders can be removed, but their message remains. Voices can be silenced, but their words echo through generations. The truth may cost a person their freedom, their position, even their life, but it always wins in the end, because people remember, the world remembers. And the harder those in power fight to suppress the truth, the louder it becomes. So the question is not whether Imran Khan will be free, the question is when. The question is how long the people will tolerate injustice before they rise and demand what is rightfully theirs. Because if there is one lesson history has taught us, it is this: the cost of truth may be great, but the cost of silence is even greater. And no matter how long it takes, no matter how difficult the road, the truth always finds its way back to the light. Justice is not selective. It is not a privilege reserved for a few, nor should it be a tool wielded by those in power to serve their own interests. Justice is the foundation of any fair and free society, a principle that stands above personal agendas, political affiliations, and power struggles. It is the shield that protects the weak, the sword that cuts through oppression, and the voice that speaks for those who have been silenced. But when justice is denied to one, it is denied to all. The imprisonment of Imran Khan is not just about one man. It is about what his detention represents, what it signals to the people of Pakistan and to the world. If a leader who was chosen by millions can be removed through unjust means, what does that say about the rights of the common citizen? If laws can be twisted to serve the powerful and suppress opposition, what happens to the ordinary man who seeks fairness in the courts? If one voice can be silenced without due process, how safe are the voices of journalists, activists, and anyone who dares to question authority? Justice does not exist in fragments. A country cannot claim to uphold justice while selectively applying it. It cannot imprison one leader on vague charges while allowing others to walk free, despite corruption, dishonesty, and betrayal of public trust. When the law is not applied equally, it is no longer justice, it is control disguised as legality. And when the people see this imbalance, when they recognize that justice is being used as a weapon instead of a safeguard, trust in the system begins to erode. Throughout history, moments like this have determined the fate of nations. Leaders have been unjustly imprisoned before, voices have been forcefully silenced, and yet, in every instance, the world has watched as these actions triggered something much greater than the oppressors anticipated. Because injustice does not stop at one person. It spreads like a disease, infecting every part of society. When one man is unfairly detained, it sets a precedent. It tells the people that their rights, too, can be taken away whenever it suits those in power. No society can truly progress when justice is not impartial. No country can claim to be democratic when opposition is crushed instead of debated. The moment the justice system becomes a tool of revenge rather than fairness, it loses its legitimacy. And once legitimacy is lost, it is only a matter of time before the people begin to question everything, every verdict, every law, every action taken in the name of governance. The issue is far greater than one leader, far deeper than one political movement. It is about the fundamental principle that no man or woman should live in fear of being punished simply for speaking the truth, for challenging corruption, for standing up for what they believe in. It is about ensuring that the courts remain a place of fairness, not favoritism, that the law remains a protector of rights, not a tool for political suppression. Because when justice is denied to one, it creates a ripple effect. It weakens the fabric of an entire nation. It tells the people that their voices do not matter, that their votes do not count, that their rights can be taken at any moment. And once the people stop believing in justice, once they lose faith in the institutions meant to protect them, the very foundation of a nation begins to crack. Hope is one of the most powerful forces in the world. It has carried people through the darkest of times, lifted nations from the depths of despair, and fueled revolutions that reshaped history. Hope is not just a feeling, it is a movement, an unshakable belief that no matter how dire the circumstances, no matter how strong the opposition, change is possible. It is the voice that whispers to the oppressed, the light that refuses to be dimmed, the fire that burns, even when surrounded by walls of injustice. Those in power have always feared hope, because it is the one thing they cannot fully control. They can imprison leaders, but they cannot imprison the dreams they inspired. They can silence voices, but they cannot erase the truth that has already been spoken. They can use force to break a movement, but they cannot break the will of the people who refuse to surrender. History has shown time and time again that dictatorships fall, corrupt systems collapse, and oppressive regimes eventually crumble not because of weapons, not because of wealth, but because of the unwavering hope of the people. Imran Khan's imprisonment is an attempt to shatter that hope. It is a message meant to discourage, to make people believe that resistance is futile, that speaking up comes with consequences too heavy to bear. But here's the reality: hope does not die in a prison cell. It does not disappear when a leader is taken away. If anything, it grows stronger, because every act of oppression only adds to the fire. Every injustice witnessed only strengthens the resolve of those who believe in a better future. Throughout history, those who have stood for justice have faced imprisonment, exile, and persecution. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years behind bars, but his vision for South Africa did not fade. Mahatma Gandhi was arrested multiple times, yet his dream of independence did not die. Martin Luther King Jr. was jailed for his activism, but his message of equality spread far beyond the walls that confined him. These leaders proved that hope cannot be chained, that ideas cannot be silenced, that movements do not end simply because their leaders are targeted. The people of Pakistan are not just witnessing an injustice, they are experiencing a defining moment. A moment that tests their patience, their strength, and their belief in the power of change. Every person who has ever dreamed of a better Pakistan, every individual who has ever wished for a country free from corruption, every young man and woman who has hoped for a fair and just system, they now carry the responsibility of ensuring that hope does not fade. The struggle for justice has never been easy. It has never come without resistance. Those who benefit from the old ways will always fight to keep things as they are, to protect their privilege, to silence those who threaten their control. But they underestimate the resilience of the human spirit. They fail to understand that the more they try to suppress hope, the stronger it becomes, because when people have nothing left to lose, they become unstoppable. When they realize that their dreams for a better future are being stolen from them, they do not retreat, they rise. There are moments in history when the people must decide whether they will accept injustice or challenge it, whether they will surrender to fear or fight for their future, whether they will allow their hopes to be buried or ensure that they live on, no matter the cost. And in those moments, the choice they make does not just define their present, it shapes their destiny. The battle for justice, democracy, and truth is never fought in vain. History has shown that no prison is strong enough to hold back the will of the people. No act of suppression is powerful enough to erase the voices of millions, and no leader who stands for justice is ever truly silenced. Imran Khan's imprisonment is not just about one man, it is about the soul of a nation, about whether the people will allow their rights to be stolen or rise to reclaim them. This moment is bigger than politics. It is about the principles that define a nation, the values that determine its future. If justice is denied to one, it is denied to all. If democracy is dismantled for convenience, it endangers everyone. If the truth is punished, then oppression is rewarded, and that is a reality no nation can afford to accept. But despite the attempts to break the spirit of the people, despite the fear that those in power try to instill, one truth remains: unshaken hope cannot be jailed. Movements that are born from conviction do not die. The pursuit of justice does not end with a prison sentence, and the fight for democracy does not stop because of intimidation. The people of Pakistan now stand at a crossroads, faced with a choice that will define their future. They can either accept injustice as an unavoidable reality or refuse to be silenced. They can either let democracy be taken from them or demand that it be restored. The world is watching, history is waiting, and the power to shape what comes next is in the hands of the people.